Hey, college football fans. This is me coming to you again. I'm Brian Mott, enjoying the world of college football every Saturday. I put together a new set of rankings that I can look at to tell me which teams are actually playing competitive football and which teams are just playing people that they intend to blow out and beat. So I'm going through here now, ranking the FBS divisions by the actual games that they've played and sharing with you my results. I'll update this every week, so be sure to subscribe, like, and send me whatever comments you've got about what you want to see in terms of analysis and how your teams are doing. So, what is a resume ranking? Well, here's how it works. One, we're trying to identify which teams have actually played the best teams in the country and come up with the result to show that they've beat them. Second, it's to look for teams that are just coasting by, that have played teams that aren't really highly ranked. They've got the wins, but there's no resume behind it. I come at this from the perspective that I love college football and I want the very best, but I want the best for all of the teams out there, the Power Five, the Group of Five, and the independents. I want to see the regular season be maintained as the exciting season that it is, but I also want to get away of a lot of the disappointing postseason. And I feel as though a lot of the manipulations that have been done over the last 30 years, the introduction of the BCS, the CFP, while well intended, has created problems. And let's call those out and see if we can't fix them. And recognize that all of this is driven by money. To see more competitive parity within the college system means that there cannot be unfair advantages written inside of the rules that allow for additional money and recruitment that comes through the bowl process, the ranking process, and the college football playoff selection process. This needs to end, and these videos will attempt to show where an injustice is happening and where folks are perhaps getting the benefit of the doubt where others did not. How does resume ranking work? Well, quite simply, each team has the ability to earn a certain number of points within the game. The visiting team has a chance to earn up to 100. The home team can earn up to 90. There is a 10-point bias towards the visitors. So where do those points come from? 50 points goes to the winner, straight up. 10 points always goes to the visiting team. If you're paying a top 25 team from ranking 11 to 25, you'll get a 15-point bonus. If you're playing somebody in the top 10, you'll get a 25-point bonus. The remainder of the points are allocated based upon the difference in your ranking between you and your opponent. If you're ranked 2 points above, then you would fall into the upper half of the table in this area here, right? I'm ranked number 7, my opponent's ranked number 9, so I would be in this category. I'm expected to win, but it should be close. And I'll even give credit for meeting the expectation in extremely tight games. However, if you're number 9 playing number 7, then there's a little less expectation that you will actually win the game. And so I give credit for keeping the game close and moving your way through there. If you're highly favored, then it should be a blowout. If it stays close, you'll be penalized. If you're a major underdog, you should get blown out. And so if you can keep the game close, then we will give you advantage points in that respect as well. So let's look at how this polling works with who our current number 1 is, Georgia. You can see they had a great win against Oregon. Oregon was ranked, and so they got a broad spectrum of points, both from the win-loss column, from Oregon being a ranked opponent, and from blowing them out. Unfortunately, after they blew them out, Oregon was no longer ranked. Week 2, we go back, and that game is now only worth 50 points because they're no longer ranked, and you would expect the number 2 school to blow away an unranked team. But we come into the 3rd week, and we see Oregon had climbed its way back in. I mean, they were just barely out of the ranking. They climbed their way back in, and so we actually reestablish some of those. What we'll do is every week we will reevaluate the table based upon the current rankings. In doing this, Georgia comes in with a total resume ranking of 58.3. Pay attention to a little bit of what's going on here. The team, if your team isn't ranked, or if you're an FCS, right, it's a 50-point game. You don't get any bonus points. That 50 is going to be something we watch for as we go through the other tables throughout this ranking system. All right, so let's look at the table. Real simple. Georgia is on top of the AP poll, but you can see when we look at the quality, in spite of that Oregon thing, although Oregon's coming back around and we'll bring them back up, it's actually Kentucky that has the most significant win in the table. Now, I told you to watch for what happens on the right side of the table. You see all those 50s and some of them under 50, but all of those 50s basically mean that they played opponents, or one interpretation of 50 is that they've played opponents that they were expected to win and they won. Nothing more, right? I don't think that necessarily proves that you deserve the ranking that you have. And we'll look at Michigan in particular because they're my call out for this week. All right. So in my world, it's Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, surprisingly Oregon, that round out my top 5 of actual quality play against ranked teams and the wins that they had. And that even allows for Oregon to be blown away by number 1 Georgia. We can look at that in more detail in another video. Looking at Kentucky a little bit closer, we see the same thing. What drives them is this win over Florida, right? We've only got 3 games, so a one game that's significant is going to drive the average. As we get this into the 50% and 6, 7, 8 games of the schedule played, these things will start to average themselves out a little bit more. So expect over the next few weeks that number 1 slot's going to change, or could potentially change. But there will be a lot of shuffling of the deck as this table normalizes. But you can see that even with that one significant game, they've still had 2, I'd say, easy games. All those games have been played at home. And so that's what drives us. But beating Florida away at this point in the season, that's a key matchup. Big win. Congratulations to Kentucky. Right now, you've got the resume. Now, who's our biggest pretender? Well, I mentioned them a moment ago. And the biggest pretender right now is Michigan. It's not to say Michigan won't be number 4 at the end of the day. But think about this. As number 4, Michigan is likely to get a CFP bid. Name one team on here that says that they deserve a number 4 ranking, right? They have played teams that they were expected to beat by 3, 4 touchdowns. They haven't even traveled. All of their games have been at home. This is not the resume of the number 4 team in the country. I hope as we get into Big Ten play that Michigan is able to perform and these numbers go up. But currently, I don't think Michigan's proven anything to us beyond they can beat teams that they were supposed to beat. All right. So going back to the final table as we get ready to close this up, I just want to make a few comments. First, this poll does not necessarily tell us who the best team in the country is. It only tells us what teams have performed the best thus far on the field against what we believe has been the best competition. And that's a little tough to swallow, especially as I look at that Oregon slot. I expect that loss to Alabama or Georgia will weigh it down a little bit more in the future. But we'll watch those numbers and see what happens. Also, I would say up front, in my heart of hearts, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, those probably are the top 5 teams in the country. But that's all based on expectation. It's not necessarily based on what they've delivered on the field or against the opponents that they've played. And so what I expect to see happen is that the resume rankings will soon track to that. What I'm concerned about, though, is that there will be a lot of forgiveness with those 5 teams. And when that happens, we will call it out. There's already one example of that this year with regards to the Alabama-Texas game. And we'll look at that in more detail at another time. Right? I also expect that these items in red, that this top 20 grouping will have scores that should be up in at least the 60s. If we can't manage that, then I think there's something seriously wrong with the way we schedule college football games and the way we come up with top 25 rankings. So with that, I want to say thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of it all. Let's see how this table builds its way through the remainder of the season. If you want to see my updates, just subscribe to the channel. We'll post them hopefully every Monday, no later than every Tuesday, following each week of the college football season. Thanks and goodbye.